Hey everybody, Nate here from WASD20. We are continuing our series on painting miniatures, and I know everyone's eager for me to actually start laying some paint down on this miniature, Bartholomew Bugbear, who you may remember we got all ready for paint last time. And while I will be starting to paint him later tonight, I'm going to make you wait for that video because I'm going to be doing this one on paint and brush selection, which will be an important one for those of you who are new to this hobby. So, what I've got here is just a wide selection of paints, and we'll talk about each one of them. And know that I am not an extreme veteran here. I'm relatively new to painting miniatures, but I will share some of my thoughts based on my experience on the paint first, and then on the brushes. Okay, so the paint. First off, we'll start with the good old cheapo craft paint. This stuff is available at most big hobby stores, craft stores, Michaels, Joann Fabrics, Hobby Lobby, you name it. You can even get them at your local supermarket sometimes. Just cheap acrylic craft paint. And what I've found is that often this does the job just fine. And honestly, I think it's a great starting point for getting into painting miniatures, because you can get these for usually $1, $1.50 each, and you can just get a whole bunch of them for fairly cheap and start painting right away. Some people who are very good painters continue to use craft paint for all their miniature painting, and you really wouldn't be able to tell it much of a difference. And there are people who do amazing work with just cheap craft paint. So I'll put that out there. Now, that said, I've noticed a big difference in terms of pigment density and some of the other things. This one right here I can tell is separating, like the pigment is separating from the, I guess, the medium, and it's kind of getting chunky and dried out over time. This one right here just does not cover well compared to my other metallic paints right here. So this one, yeah, it's just super thin. It takes a lot of coats, and it just doesn't look as metallic as some of my other ones. So I can tell some differences, but you can still get very good results from that. And again, if you're totally new to it and you're just kind of intimidated by how much you can spend on all this stuff, it's never a bad idea just to start cheap. And then if you decide you really like it, sure, try some other paints. But it's a good way to build a big collection of paints for fairly inexpensive. And what I've done is I bought a bunch of those, and then I slowly am adding more expensive paints here and there. I'll go to the store and I'll pick up another pot or two of a little more expensive paint, just here and there over time. So let's get into some of the more expensive paint now. Probably one of the better known brands is Citadel paint. This is manufactured by Games Workshop, of course, the makers of Warhammer. And yeah, it's really good stuff. It's kind of expensive. I think I spent $4 or $5 per pot of these. And yeah, so they can get kind of pricey. And I've heard from a lot of people that they're overrated and that they're really not worth the extra price. They come in these paint pots, which I don't really like as much as, for example, a squirt bottle like this, because you have to dip your brush in there and then put it on your palette. And they're fairly thick and require quite a bit of thinning to put on miniatures, but that's not such a bad thing. That's most paints, honestly. So Citadel is a very good brand, and a lot of people swear by it, and it's all they use. So look into it. You can usually find it at some of your local game and hobby shops. Another brand that comes in a pot is the Privateer Press Paint, so very similar. And I found this to be pretty good stuff. It's a little bit cheaper. I think it was a little more than $3. And personally, I think it's just as good. You're not going to get nearly as wide a color selection, I think, as you will in the Citadel paints, but it's still really solid paint. And I would probably prefer Privateer Press Paint over Citadel just because it's a little bit cheaper, and I can't tell a big difference. These next two bottles are kind of worn off here, but this is MSP paint, and this is the Reaper brand paint. If you buy Reaper miniatures, they're usually going to send you a bottle or two for free, so that's kind of nice. I haven't actually purchased any, but I've got like 5 or 6 bottles of this stuff that they've just sent me free over time when I order miniatures. And it's pretty good stuff. I like the bottles, again, because that's just a lot easier to squirt it onto a palette than it is to dip into a pot. And it's really thin, so it actually requires very little thinning, but it's, I still thin it a little bit, but it doesn't require nearly as much thinning as these, so you can just squirt it, and a lot of times you can just brush it right onto your miniature, which is kind of nice. And yet when I say thin, I mean it still has very good pigment density, and it's still a high quality paint that I would recommend people check out. These ones retail for $3.29 each on Reaper's website, and you can probably get them other places too. Lastly, the brand that I've kind of settled on as my go-to brand is Vallejo. And Vallejo is highly recommended by a lot of painters. They come in a few different lines. This is the model color. Then I've got a few of these game color as well. And then there's also Model Color Air, which is made for airbrushing, but also works quite well with just brushing it on traditionally on miniatures. So yeah, these are really solid paints. They're usually going to retail for about $3 a bottle, but you can see a couple of these I got for a bit cheaper, $1.79. And one of the reasons I like these two is because they just sell them at a couple local hobby shops, and yeah, I kind of like to support those little local places. They also sell the Citadel paints at those places, but they're again a lot more expensive, and I really like these better just for the style of bottle, and they're very solid paints that do a really good job. So I recommend checking out Vallejo paints. So again, don't be afraid just to start with craft paint. I know a lot of people overinvest in hobbies, and I've seen people, if, for example, buy a $2,000 mountain bike and then, a couple months later decide they don't really like mountain biking. So if you're not made of money, don't overdo it at first. Just start slow and see if you like it, and if you do, continue to invest in the hobby. A couple honorable mentions here just on other things you might want to consider that we'll get to in later videos. Getting a wash. These are called shades now from Citadel paints. Sometimes they're called inks or ink wash, but they're going to come in handy a lot too. We'll get into that later. Also in later videos we're going to be talking about clear coats, gloss varnish, or dull coat lacquer, things to kind of finish your miniature and give it a protective coat. So just other things you might want to consider buying if you're getting into painting miniatures. Alright, so that's the paints. Let's talk about the brushes now. Here are two brushes from my very first set of miniature painting brushes, and these were extremely cheap. I think I got a big pack of them, 6 brushes for $6 or something like that from the hobby shop. Actually, it was when I bought these folk art paints too, and they served me pretty well on the first batch of miniatures I painted. I feel like I got good results on them. When I look back, I think I could do much better. But yeah, I mainly used this very small one and one other similarly sized one, and they were able to get decent detail and held up pretty well. And I still let my kids use these when they're painting miniatures, because now I've kind of upgraded. But yeah, they did just fine. What I'll say is even the fine point on this one just didn't maintain a very fine point. It didn't stay very pointy. And sometimes you do really want a pointy end when you're doing that detailed work on a miniature. Still, decent brushes and not a bad way to start. These were similar. I think I got these several years ago when I was doing some watercolor painting or something like that. And I still use them here and there for, base coating a miniature or maybe brushing on some glue or something like that, or a lacquer. They still work pretty well, but I mainly have upgraded my brushes now to these. And I only have 3 of them, but these are Rosemary and Company Kolinksy Sable Brushes. Kolinksy Sable is a superior material for painting miniatures because it maintains its shape very well. I think it comes from the hair of a certain kind of animal, perhaps a sable, maybe? I don't know. I'm ignorant of these things, but animal rights activists beware. These have been a really solid brush for me. I have a size 0, a size 00, which is even finer, and my main brush that I use is a size 1. I will probably be getting a size 2 one of these days as well. So yeah, these have been really good brushes. They maintain their shape very well. They come to a finer point, and even though I don't take great care of my brushes, I've still been really impressed by the durability of these, and they just give me great results, so I really like them. Now, price-wise, these were about $5 a piece. I had to order them from Rosemary and Company directly in England and got them shipped to the US, and altogether it was 16 British pounds for 3 brushes and shipping, which is about $20. So they were about $5 a piece, and then you consider about $5 for shipping in American dollars. And that's a pretty good value compared to other brushes you can buy. A lot of painters will recommend the Winsor & Newton Series 7 Kolinksy Sable brushes. which are also very good. But I'll post a link to the Amazon product pages for these, and you can see they're a lot more expensive. I mean, for a size 1 brush, I think right now it's like $14. So compared to $5 for my size 1 brush here, I think I'll keep that money because these brushes are still really good. Alright, so I hope you found this useful. If you're a miniature painter, I would love to hear from you down in the comments below. What are your preferred paints and brushes? And what advice would you give to people who are getting into miniature painting for the first time in terms of the materials and the investment there? What tools have you found invaluable and what would you recommend? Alright, next video we will actually start laying some paint down on the miniature, I promise, and that will be coming in less than a week if you're watching this on release day. So yeah. Any comments or questions, leave them down below. If you enjoyed this one and found it useful, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I would also really appreciate it if you subscribed to the channel. And everybody take care. You'll see me again very soon.